Hello, hello. Let me check in with chapter 11 of Stnr, which is a pretty short chapter, which is basically it's continuing fallout from his feud with Holly Lomax, who is now the head of the English department, Stnr being a professor at this university, Columbia? Not well, it's not the Columbia, it's like Missouri Columbia University, and yeah, he's come back and um, he he sees Walker, the student that he didn't want to come back, he didn't want to pass, who has gotten passed, who has gotten accepted back in, just did orals, and I'm sure Holly shepherded him through that process, and he sort of he rubs it in, he does a little tilt of the thing and does like a little eat shit grin at Stnr. Probably the more worrisome thing is that Lomax ices him out. Basically, is just like completely like stone cold. He goes to him and says like, "Look, we disagreed. Can we just kind of get over this? We used to be friends. We never were friends." Is Lomax's thing to that. And what it comes down to is that Lomax believes that Stnr's prejudice against somebody with disabilities is what led him to try and ruin this kid's career. Whereas obviously Stnr has his opinions, and the thing is, and that hits Lomax to his core. He is somebody also who has been born with disabilities, and it hurts him deeply on that level. He believes he is correct, and it's like, I would fire you. If it was in my power, I would fire you. I can't do that. And they end the thing saying like, if you ever want to come to see me again, you have to make an appointment with my secretary. Do not come see me. And that is basically the last time they talk for 20 years, directly, in this closed little environment, a refuge, or, hell, being trapped with people that you despise. And because that, where his enemy is the head of the English department, both the instructors and the other students sense this and slowly kind of back away until Stnr is completely isolated. And he says like, oh, well, maybe I'll have more time with my family. Unfortunately, like, his classes are scheduled to be the shittiest, like, one at the beginning of the day and one at the very end of the day, spread out all through like 6 days of the week. So he has, very little time that way. And Edith does not want to see him. It's more of a disruption. It's more of it makes her physically ill to see him that way. And doesn't get to see Grace, his daughter, at all, very much, except for when Edith is clearing the dishes away. That's like about the only times. So he's isolated. He's isolated from his work. All his workmates, his students. From his work, he's isolated from his family. If he could have a refuge in that, he does not have the refuge in that. And we end with things. He had come to that moment in his age. This is page 179. He had come to that moment in his age where there occurred to him, with increasing intensity, a question of such overwhelming simplicity that he had no means to face it. He found himself wondering if his life was worth the living, if it had ever been. It was a question, he suspected, that came to all men at one time or another. He wondered if it came to them with such an impersonal force as it came to him. The question brought with it a sadness, but it was a general sadness which, he thought, had little to do with himself or his particular fate. He was not even sure that the question sprang from the most immediate and obvious causes, from what his own life had become. It came, he believed, from the accretion of his years, from the density of accident and circumstance, and from what he had come to understand of them. He took a grim and ironic pleasure from the possibility that what little learning he had managed to acquire had led him to this knowledge, that in the long run of all things, even the learning he had let himself know, even learning Even the learning that let him know this were futile and empty, and at last diminished into a nothingness that did not alter. One late once late after his evening class, he returned to his office and sat down at his desk trying to read. It was winter, and a snow had fallen during the day, so that the out of doors was covered with a white softness. The office was overheated. He opened a window beside the desk so that the cool air might come into the close room. He breathed deeply and let his eyes wander over the white floor of the campus. On an impulse, he switched out the light on his desk and sat in the hot darkness of his office. The cold air filled his lungs, and he leaned towards the open window. He heard the silence of the winter night, and it seemed to him that he somehow felt the sounds that were absorbed by the delicate and intricately cellular being of the snow. Nothing moved upon the whiteness. It was a dead scene, which seemed to pull at him, to suck at his consciousness, just as it pulled the sound from the air and buried it within a cold white softness. He felt himself pulled outwards towards the whiteness, which spread as far as he could see, and which was a part of the darkness from which it glowed of the clear and cloudless sky without height or depth. For an instant he felt himself go out of the body, and sat motionless before the window. And as he felt himself slip away, everything, the flat whiteness, the trees, the tall columns, the night, the far stars, seemed incredibly tiny and far away, as if they were dwindling into a nothingness. Then behind him a radiator clanked. He moved, and the scene became itself. With a curious reluctant relief, he again snapped on his desk lamp. He gathered a book and a few papers, went out of the office, walked through the darkened corridors, and let himself out of the wide double doors at the back of Jesse Hall. He walked slowly home, aware of each footstep crunching with muffled loudness in the dry snow. And it's like, that's Stoner. That is the novel, that is the man, Stoner. And I mean, there's something there that, like, him saying that, like, it's like, a general sadness which he thought had little to do with himself or his particular fate. And then there's one sense of that, and there's one sense in that which you think, oh, he's fooling himself. This is a very particular sadness. He's in a particular situation. He's frustrated both in his personal and professional life. Shut out, isolated, alienated. But there's another sense that it is actually, I can at least for me, I feel kinship to Stoner, which I'm not isolated in my professional life. I've got a good relationship with my at home, but there's a general sadness there, which is kind of universal, which I think is the thing that kind of really touches me about this novel. I do wonder about the whole situation between Stoner and Walker Lomax, whether there isn't a prejudice there, whether there isn't something going on there that you could definitely find fault with Stoner, that he is being perhaps unbending to the point of excluding people, and that Lomax has a point that you're actually a bad teacher that way if you're gonna exclude someone like Walker. I mean, the novel definitely presents Walker as a complete fucking asshole, as a con guy, as somebody who's riding on stuff, who maybe is implying that someone with a disability will use it to their advantage to be lazy and to be kind of shiftless. That I think the novel is doing, and I resist that. That seems like a kind of a conservative thing of, oh, it's those lazy people with disabilities asking for a handout. It's like, no, I think they're actually asking to be treated like human beings, to be given equal access, equal opportunity to be able to be either great or to be complete failures like the rest of us. So there's I do have a kind of a there's a good uncomfortableness there, which I think should be examined. I don't think it should be just accepted that Stnr and the novel's point of view of Walker and Lomax should be just like accepted on face value. Or it should just, you have to accept the facts of the novel, but you can also kind of go, okay, but what's behind the facts of this novel? What kind of attitudes are being revealed here? And have a discussion about those, which I guess I'm having right now. All right, I will leave it there. That was chapter 11. We'll go on to chapter 12 next of Stnr. And that sadness, and that infinite smallness of things. Yeah. All right, more videos later.